Hello everybody, I hope everyone is doing well today. Today we are going to be learning imperatives. Let me go ahead and write that out for you. Sorry about that. Imperatives. This is going to be our subject for today. Today we are going to be learning imperatives. So let's get started. What are imperatives? Let me go ahead and write that out for you. Imperatives. And what are they? Well, imperatives are verbs used to give orders, commands, warning, or instructions. And if you use please to make a request. Let me go ahead and write that out for you. Verbs used to give orders, commands, warning, or instructions. So, let me go ahead and repeat that for you. Imperatives are verbs used to give orders, commands, warnings, or instructions. For example, I'm going to go ahead and give you an example here. Example. You can say, give me that tape, please. Give me that tape, please. So, like I said before, here you are given an order or a command saying that you want the tape. You say, give me that tape, please. These are imperatives. Moving on to my next part. To make the imperative, use the infinitive of the verb without to. For example, let me go ahead and write that out for you. To make the imperative, this is important, so I'm going to go ahead and put a star here. To make the imperative, use the infinitive of the verb without to. Go ahead and write this in blue. Without to. For example, I'm going to go ahead and give you guys an example. For example, oops, sorry about that. Let me use a different color. For example, our first example is come here. And my next example is sit down. So, to make the imperative, you have to use the infinitive of the verb without to. Like I said, here are my examples. This is a very simple form of the imperative. Come here is an order. Sit down is also another order or a command. Now, moving on to my next parts. To make a negative imperative, put do not or don't before the verb. Let's go ahead and write that out. To make a negative imperative, put do not. Let me go ahead and write that in a different color. Put do not or don't before the verb. And this is to make negative imperatives. Excuse me. To make a negative imperative, put do, put don't or do not before the verb. So, if you want to make a negative imperative, let's move on to our examples. For example, I'm going to go ahead and give you the example. Don't. That's our negative. And here is our verb. So I'm going to go ahead and negative. And here is our verb. Like I said before, if you want to make an imperative negative, it's going to be do not or don't plus the verb. Let me give you another example. Do not. Actually, let me go ahead and write that out in blue so you can see it better. Do not walk on the grass. Here is our negative. And here is our verb. Like I said before, first you would to make a negative imperative, you will put do not or don't before the verb, then you write the verb. Now, moving on to my next part. You can also use let's before the verb if you are including yourself in the imperative. So, you're you are including yourself in the imperative. You would use let's. I'm going to go ahead and write that down. If you want to include yourself in an imperative, you would use let's. So if you want to include yourself in an imperative, you will use let's. For example, let me go ahead and write that out for you. For example, you could say, let's stop Now, like I said before, let's you could use let's to include yourself, and it comes before the verb. Let's go ahead and write that out for you. Comes before the verb. And if you want to include yourself, use let's. So here I want to include myself. I will use let's. It comes before the verb, which is very important. And if you want to include yourself, like I said before, you would use let's. And my example here is let's stop now. Now, moving on to another example. Oops, sorry about that. Let's have. Actually, I'm going to go ahead and write my verb. Let's have some lunch. This is a imperative, like I said before. I'm going to go ahead and underline this for you. Let's use it if you want to include yourself. And here is my verb. And let me go ahead and write this out for you. To include yourself. And I'm going to go ahead and read that out for you. Let's have some lunch, meaning that I want to have lunch with someone. Let me go ahead and also write that out for you. I want to have lunch. That is to include yourself. Now, moving on to my next part.